Hello, Professor Chibale. Welcome to LIYSF.
Well, thank you, Minu. Thanks for having me. Yeah, it's been great being here.
Awesome. Can you start us off and tell us a bit about yourself?
So I'm a professor of organic chemistry at the University of Cape Town, where I hold the Nobel Chair in African-centric drug discovery and development. And I'm also the director of our drug discovery center called H3D.
Amazing.
In Cape Town. Yes.
Incredible.
Yeah.
What is your favorite thing about being an organic chemist?
So the thing about organic chemistry is, the ability to look at a molecule, the chemical structure of a molecule, looking at it and looking at the functional groups that are there, and then I start imagining the kind of chemical reactions that could be performed, on those functional groups to generate other molecules with other properties, including properties of medical benefits. That's what I love about organic chemistry. The logic, it's beautiful.
That sounds very exciting. So what does a normal workday look like for you then?
So a normal weekday for me, if I look at my different responsibilities, one of the other responsibilities I have is I'm the warden of a residence at the University of Cape Town called Upper Campus Residence. It used to be called Smart Soul. So I look after 235 young men who live in that residence. So in the morning, I'll make sure that I deal with any issues arising from the residents. And then I go to my office. So part of what I do, apart from being director of this H3D center, I also have an academic group where I have PhD students doing studies. So that's the typical thing, is that I deal with undergraduates in my residence and deal with disciplinary issues. Sometimes I chair disciplinary hearings and find people guilty, and we sentence them. And then I go to the center, we discuss projects with other partners, and then I go to group meetings with my academic group with my PhD students. So that's a typical week for me when I'm in Cape Town.
That sounds very diverse.
Yeah, exactly.
What impact do you think AI can have on the medical world?
AI, artificial intelligence, currently literally affects every sector of society. And I think when it comes to medicine and health in general, and maybe I can draw it from just the way that we're utilizing it, all the way through from really bringing efficiency to the drug discovery process, speeding up the process of discovering medicines, all the way through to predicting the efficacy and safety of a medicine. It's being deployed in basically manufacturing, to improve processes of manufacturing. So it's having profound impact already, and I think that we're going to see AI also really affecting how we prescribe medicines, this sort of stratified medicine, where it will help us tailor drugs for specific individuals. And that's exactly how we're using AI in our health innovation projects. Yeah.
That gives us a lot to think about, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
So you just attended the opening ceremony for the 65th LIYSF this morning. How was it?
It was such an inspirational opening session. All the way from Richard Mahill welcoming us to Claire Ewo, the president's talking about how chemistry was not our favorite subject, and of course I'm a chemist. Yeah. But really the highlight was really the talk by Sir George Winter, Nobel Laureate, 2018 Nobel Prize winner in chemistry. I think the inspiration to see how it moved from fundamental basic science all the way through to being an entrepreneur, basically spinning out companies. And really I think the sharing his life story of some of the challenges and the lessons learned from there, I think was very inspirational. But also I think for him to come down and speak to young people, I think is very inspiring, because once upon a time he was like them, those young people, and to come back and really mix with them, I think it was very inspiring. So I was very inspired by his presentation.
Sounds like a very inspiring day,
Yeah.
and a great lineup of speakers, including yourself.
Thank you so much.
Your next question is, why do you think representation in the STEM industry is important when addressing these global issues that we have?
First of all, whether it's in science, we talk about STEM here, any kind of sector in life, is that no single individual or group of individuals or populations or gender, whatever it is, that has a monopoly over knowledge. And I think that I firmly believe that we were created to depend on each other. It's all about how do we bring our gifts and our talents to the table. While we benefit from other people's gifts and talents, how do we contribute? You can have a very rich person, a billionaire. Okay, he's a billionaire or she's a billionaire, but they will need a nurse at the hospital when they get sick. They will need a teacher to teach their children, etc., etc. So I think the diversity in STEM really is so important, because having different perspectives towards the same problem is actually the best way to address this, because no one has a monopoly over the best way to do things. So I think bringing diverse minds together, just like, in my talk I was talking about translational medicine. You have to integrate multiple disciplines. One discipline is not enough to solve a complex problem. The same thing is true about diversity in STEM. We need diverse people, diverse insight, diverse skills, diverse knowledge to contribute to these problems. No way about it, we need diversity in its entirety.
That was so well put, and I think it really does feed into our theme for this year, which is science across borders.
Right.
What needs to change with the current method of genetic sampling to achieve greater medical equity? What do you think?
Yeah, I think when it comes to genetic sampling, we need to really think about the historically neglected populations. So what do I mean by this? Most of the research and development, let's say, of health products, whether they are vaccines or diagnostics or medicines, those have historically happened in the developed world, the so-called global north. And I think that in order to be able to maximally benefit from this huge genetic diversity that's around the world, especially in Africa. I mean, we were just talking about diversity in STEM. And if you look at the African continent, for example, it's the most genetically diverse continent. So if you can do a clinical trial in Africa, if a product, a medicine or a vaccine can work in Africa, it will work everywhere else. So we have to think about really do genetic sampling. But when we do the sampling, the data needs to stay and be exploited in those regions where we don't want to be taking genetic material out of those countries. Because I think we need to empower people to be able to collect the data, because they work with the communities. There must be trust built with the communities. And the people in those countries are better placed to know how to deal with the communities. But we have to really tap into this historically neglected populations, and especially Africa. I mean, this is not because I'm an African. It is such a rich continent when it comes to genetic diversity. And so we need to train people in genetics or genomics, build capacity, develop the infrastructure, because this sampling can only benefit the global world by doing it.
That gives us a lot to think about, especially what we mean when we think about diversity across different areas and giving back as well. So, very insightful, Kelly.
Thank you. Thank you so much.
What has been the highlight of your career so far?
There have been many highlights of my career. From flying with Jürgen Klopp to meeting the Springboks in the lounge, etc., etc. But really scientifically, I think it's been the establishment of the H3D Center at the University of Cape Town, because this is something that never existed before. It's the first one of its kind in Africa, but also it's very rare worldwide to find a center like that. Basically, this will be a standalone company on its own. But the fact that it's embedded within the University of Cape Town environment is unique. So this is a highlight, because not only have we been able to build the critical infrastructure, we've been able to create jobs. We've been able to create this absorptive capacity to attract talent, to develop the talent, and to retain it in Africa, because this is a major problem across the African continent, where many countries in Africa, after independence, have sent their citizens for training, but they don't come back because there's nothing for them to do. So for me, this is an example in a small way of what is possible, that you can build something like this that is world class in Africa. And it's all about partnerships, research partnerships and funding partnerships as well.
What an amazing achievement.
Thank you so much, indeed.
Why do you think exposure to STEM is important for young people, like the 420 participants you saw at LIYSF?
It's really important to expose young people to STEM subjects at the earliest possible opportunity. You know, you heard my testimony. When I grew up in the townships, you know, there was no electricity, there was no running water, there was no television. So, you know, how do you, because your mind gets stimulated at the earliest possible opportunity. And I think we need to catch young people as early as possible, because often the perception with young people is, you know, when you have not done anything, the perception is about they want to look for careers where, you know, they can make the most money, what appears to be, you know, cool and trending, and they can get influenced to go in the wrong direction. And so I think it's important that we expose young people to science at the earliest possible opportunity, so they understand two things. First of all, that yes, science is for curiosity, but it's not just for curiosity. That science can transform lives, that science can be used for development, to create jobs, to build infrastructure, and that you can actually you know, contribute to solving some of the greatest challenges that humanity faces. But the sooner they get it, that you can be an entrepreneur as a scientist, you can become a millionaire, you can spin out companies out of scientific ideas. And the sooner they get it earlier, I think that this is really the future of science, is young people.
That's some great advice, good things to remember.
Right.
So your last question, we made it to the end, is who is your science hero and why?
My science hero is Louis Pasteur. Pasteur's milk, he's very famous. Why? He, to me, represents someone who believed in God, understood that what is out there to study as scientists, it's nature, that the more you do science, the more you stand amazed at the work of the Creator. And I think it's a humility that he embodied, he didn't win a Nobel Prize, by the way, but I just loved his approach to life. I loved, if you look at some of the quotes attributed to him, there are many of them, by the way. One of my favorite ones from him, or by him, was, he said, in trying to explain how, he saw these mirror image forms of tartaric acid, he said the following. He says, luck smiles on those who keep an open mind. So it's got some of these amazing quotes. Some of them are funny ones. There's one quote where he said, there's more wisdom in a bottle of wine than in all the books. But that quote is... But seriously, on this one, it's so true that luck smiles on those who keep an open mind. And for young people, what I kept emphasizing, you have to keep an open mind, because anything is possible. You can't be so stuck up on something that you've never done before. So to simply say, me, I've always wanted to be an engineer. Oh, really? You mean in your mother's womb you figured out? No, you have to keep an open mind, because sometimes the things that we think we're not going to enjoy, if we give them a chance, we might find that actually we love it after all. So that's, I think, is why I love Louis Pasteur, apart from being a tremendous scientist who, he did things that we are still benefiting from today, but also his humility.
That gave me a lot to think about. Thank you, Kelly.